Yeah. All right, my lovely. So hopefully you are okay. Just trying to set up my screen so we've got the whole bit. Yes, we have. Okay, good. Right. So just start as we usually do. Just taking some time to let your body rest and come back down to ground after whatever you've been doing at the weekend. Let the thigh bones drop back through the hips. Let the long arm bones drop back through the shoulder sockets. Better. And just starting to feel those curves of the spine. So the pelvis that just rolls away a little bit and the back of the head that just rolls away so the jaw can come up towards the sky. And we just go through this process of reintegration, of letting the limbs come back to the spine. You know, we have to come in to go out, so to speak. So we get more space in the joints, we get more space in the spine when we let the weights of the body, the limbs of the body, the head, the arms and the legs to go back into or reconnect with the spine. And this process of just allowing ourselves to drop in, there's then a reciprocal response, a return, that as the weights come in, there's a relaxation to the system deep inside the body that then gives this broadness and this lengthening and this softness to the structures. So we start to get more space because of that. And we might find that the arms can reposition themselves. We've got one that might have been pulled out of its alignment, and the same for the legs. As we start to work with the feet, let the toes spread and soften, let the feet roll onto their outer edges and their inner edges. The knees stay still. So if you need the hands on the front of the thighs to be able to roll the feet, can we feel the slide and glide in the calves and the shins, and a softness and an opening to the back of the knee? And then that helps the hip flexors on the front of the hips to let go and just soften a little bit. And as that happens, then there's a broadness to the back of the pelvis that starts to happen. You know, when we spend time here, the bones are allowed to rearrange themselves in the hammocks of the fascia into a space where they're not being pushed and pulled around by the muscles of the body. Can we feel the back of the pelvis, both sides equally? Can we feel the broadness in the back of the chest? On the ground, both sides equally? Can we find the back of the head, both sides equally? And then if we just let the The front of the ribs on the exhale just drop back. And this starts to anchor the arms. So with each out breath, we feel that that V shape on the front of the ribs, the costal margins, the front of the ribs can sink back. And as that starts to happen, we get a softness on the front of the chest and a lengthening up into the back of the head on the back of the chest through the ribby spine. And it gives us this lovely anchor point for the arms. So as we breathe out and the ribs drop down, we can feel the arms being sucked back towards the ground. Gives us space into the underarm. And then just allows the arms to be free in that they're completely connected. It's a bit like the seaweed. When we see seaweed that's really rooted into the ocean floor, it's got this really strong connection, but it's completely free to wave around in the sea. So we've got this root connection through the solar plexus, which allows the arms to lengthen out through the ribs, through the underside of the arm. And we get this lovely spaciousness and freedom to the arm that it can float up towards the top of the head or the top of your mat. But we feel that if we lose the ribs in an attempt to get the arms to the floor, we can compromise the ribs and the ribs leave the floor. So it's not because I've got space in the shoulder joint that the arms come to the floor. It's because I've compromised the system and the ribs are moving because the arms haven't got any more freedom to go. So we keep pulling back down through that solar plexus area and we keep running into the edges of the range of movement at the shoulder. So each time we reach an edge, we can anchor back down through the solar plexus, but we can also use the index finger and the thumb, feeling like they're being pulled away to create more space into the underarms. The arms may not get to the floor. They might not get anywhere near the floor. And that's fine because we want that continual connection of the arm back into spine, and then we want to feel that reciprocal broadening, softening, lengthening that gives us range of motion in the shoulder, rather than the system compromising itself, or if something doesn't move, something else has to, in which case it would be the ribs or maybe the pelvis is rolling in towards you. These are our compensatory movement patterns that we want to look at and just become aware of. So we keep bringing the arms back over the body and starting the movement again. And it may be at some point that we feel that the shoulder blades are flat on the floor. There's a draw back through the solar plexus, and then the arms are free to just come out to the sides. We keep that returning quality of the arms back to the spine. So even when they're coming out to the sides, we're not pulling the arms out of the sockets. We've got a weight in the hand that allows the arms to be drawn back through the socket, so the stretch comes onto the front of the chest. We can feel pec major and those other large chest muscles, and then the arms can come all the way down somewhere towards the hips, and then the arms float back up through center. But again, we're just resisting that urge to pull the arms out of the shoulders. We can let the arms just sink back. They're half a stone in weight each, so they're quite heavy. They keep connecting back to the shoulder blades, which are flat on the floor. And if that's not a reality for us, it's absolutely fine. We just keep imagining that that is the reality. pausing at places where you feel strong resistance to just breathe into those areas. So we're just finding that length all the way through the thoracic. The neck curve doesn't get compromised. The head is free as the arms come up and over. And the same as the arms come out to the side, we've got that broadening and flattening to the front of the ribs. And we're keeping the arms back through their sockets, so we're not straining the muscles at the shoulder joint. We're looking at these big muscles that attach into the sternum and the central line of the body on the front. We'll keep just accommodating these shifts in the body as they happen, as we are given more length to the spine, as muscles start to relax and release. It's a powerful thing laying on the floor. And you don't do enough of it, deemed sort of doing nothing, so we don't do it. But actually, it's a great place to just take ourselves out of gravity and restore space to the whole system. So the next time the arms come back over the body, we're just going to let the elbows drop out to the sides, palms facing each other over the body. And we're just finding the feet again, just feeling that the feet can pull down. We'll come into our laying twist, long little toe side of the underside foot pulls down into the ground. Big toe joint and the inside of the heel pulls down on that top foot. Sit bones like we're sitting on a chair. So we resist the urge to tuck the pelvis in before that rotation happens. We leave the pelvis in its neutral position. We leave the sit bones like they're sitting on a chair, and that invites, go this way, invites the sacrum into the low spine, and then allows a broadness to the chest so the chest can stay on the floor. So the rotation is really coming from that base of the ribs, top of the lumbars, and it's coming from appropriate curves of the spine. The head goes in the opposite direction to the knees. And it's the legs back through the hips into the deep waist. That brings us back to the center. And coming into the opposite side without expectation. We want to get like temporary movement amnesia, where we've got no thought about the movement that happened previously on the opposite side. We can't do matchy. So we just got to work with whatever presents on either side. So the next time we come back to the center, we're just going to reset the feet and turning the palms so that they are looking down towards the end of your mat. We're leaving the elbows out from the shoulders, and we're just letting the hands come down towards the ground. We'll feel that deep rotation in the long arm bones at the top. We might feel that the collarbones start to lift off in front of the chest. We're trying to see if we can let the long arm bones come back through their sockets and leave the shoulder blades heavy on the ground. So the hands come back up through. We're taking the backs of the hands towards the ground now. And again, just following the rotation of the long arm bone back through the shoulder into spine. There's a lot of muscles and things going on here, so we're just taking our time. Keep coming back to the feet, keep coming back to the pelvis, rolling away. You have a tendency to flatten your back into the floor. I do. Let the ribs sink back if you're a serial rib flarer. All of that stuff all helps us to see where there's sticky bits in the system. It's interesting to notice if one back of the hand comes to the floor and the other one doesn't. Not much to be done with that. We just keep integrating the arms through the shoulders towards the spine. And then the arms can come back through in that nice arc. And again, just letting the hands as an intention to come towards the floor. They may not get there, and that's fine. But again, we're just looking for those edges of resistance. And when we run into them, how can we integrate more? How can we let the arms come back towards the spine, ribs towards the spine, pelvis in its right relationship at the end of the spine, legs connecting back into the spine. We keep running through this, kind of a schematic in our head. And just seeing where the body is willing to go. So coming back towards backs of hands on the ground again. Is the jaw free, top of the shoulders. Just keep working up and down the spine. It's a little bit like our cat pose practice that comes in and out so much. We practice cat pose on all fours, of course, but it's in our movement all the time. What's going on with each individual vertebrae? And because our arms are buttoned in from the back of our head to the base of the spine, the arms have a really powerful effect on how much space we've got, how much movement we've got throughout the spine. And relationally, how much space we've got in the spine also translates out into shoulders, elbows, and eventually hands. So how much softness we've got in the palm of the hand, the broadness of the fingers, is really connected to how much space we've got in that thoracic spine, ribby spine. So coming back to the center, and we're just going to take the arms up over the body, let the long arm bones drop back through the sockets, and we're just going to let the right foot just float in towards us, give the foot a nice flick, lose any tension in the ankle. Left foot, oh, there's a nice crunch. Left foot can follow. Just letting the knees come in towards you. And again, it's a lot like the arms. We're just letting the thighs and the thigh bones just drop back through the sockets of the spine. And we're just finding the pelvis. Where are we with that lumbar curve? So from here, we've got the left arm can drop back through the shoulder, the right foot, heel just drops onto the ground. We're going to keep the left leg kind of in tabletop, so just lifting the heel a little bit. So we're making right angle with the knee, right angle with the hip. And then that heavy, heavy heel, just drawing the foot away, drawing the leg out of the socket, side of the waist. And the opposite arm, index finger and the thumb, we've already done this movement through the top part of the body. And now we're just going to add the bottom half of the body. So again, that leg is extending away from the solar plexus. So we drop the, we've let the right knee come back in, we'll drop the left heel. And let that leg just be pulled away. We want to create as much space between the rib and the top of the hip as we possibly can. So a long waist. And that comes because we feel that the heel is being pulled away towards the end of the mat. And the same with the hand. It's like you're gripping onto a bar and someone's trying to pull the bar away from you, but you're resisting that and you're pulling the arm back through the socket into the solar plexus. So we're getting this long connection through the body, opposite arm, opposite leg. And it's that lovely connection into the spine, into the core system that brings the arm and the leg back to center. So we'll just keep going on each side, right heel, left arm. And then left heel and right arm. Again, trying not to get into expectation for the two sides. It's just the experience. Noticing where the restrictions are, noticing where there's points of weakness. If we've got one side that's particularly strong, another side that's not so strong, not so responsive. Find the big toe joint, the inside of the heel, find the index finger, knuckle, and the thumb root. So the next time you finish up on the left leg, let that be your last movement here. And we can give the knees a nice hug, have a little rock from side to side. We're going to come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. And just finding our way up into our lovely square pose. So you're just going to have the hands a little bit further forward than the shins. Finding the tops of the feet. Front of the ankles, front of the shins. And again, just finding that pelvis orientation. Sit bones being pulled away from your skin. The end of your feet, end of your mat. And just feeling into the low spine. And then following that all the way up the inside of the spine, all the way up the inside of the ribs, the inside of the neck, into the crown of the head. So we remember that our head connects between the shoulder blades. And then just coming into the arms, just finding the elbows, pointy part of the elbow looking back towards the thigh, which connects the arm to the side of the rib, rather than up around the top of the shoulder. So again, as the limbs integrate into the spine, we find that feet pulling down into the ground at the ankle, tilts the pelvis under, and just starts that process of the pubic bone going back towards the inside of the sacrum, of the tummy below the navel, starting to touch in with the low spine, each individual vertebrae. And then the belly button back towards the spine, and then above the tummy button. Into the underside of the ribs again. So we want to become familiar with this area in the abdominal cavity, because for a lot of us, it's behind the guts of the matter, it's behind all the intestines and all the organs there. You can end up a bit stiff and a bit sticky, or a bit disconnected from here. So before the ribs and the arms and the shoulders get involved, can we just spend time down in this lower part of the trunk? Walking up the inside of the low spine. And then as we release, the ribs can drop a little bit. And it's like we're just sending the low spine and the tail away towards the top of the wall behind you. But the initial movement is long back towards your feet. And the finishing move, if you like, is the tail lifting away. So there's a lot that happens between that drop at T12, so where the ribs meet the lumbars. Can we walk down the inside of the low spine? Yes, we can. And can we get down into the pelvis, and then finally all the way down to the tail? So it feels like the pelvis is a big ball sat on the rockers of the top of the legs, and it can just slide backwards and forwards. The front of the hips disappear into the top of the legs when we're sending the pelvis away, and the opposite direction, there's that rotation to pelvis at the top of the leg. And we just want to practice that. It's great for our hip health. It's also really important for those elastic structures, those supportive structures that live deep inside the pelvis. Keep all the organs in place, but they're also fundamental connections for the legs back into the spine. So then we can take our spine wave, tail drops down towards the heels, and complete that movement where we're just walking up the inside of the spine, inside the spine, inside the spine. And then when we get to the base of the ribs and start to pull down into the ground, we're not pushing the floor away. There's a subtle difference to it. So we feel that palm of the hand gets pulled down into the ground, and that takes us into these low ribs. And we can pick up and drop the low ribs all the way sort of to the base of the shoulder blade, so about T7, something like that. And then can we feel that the heart can be drawn back between the shoulder blades from the front of the chest to the back of the chest? It's a place in our ribs that is a bit stiff. It's supposed to be stiff because it's a protective structure, but it can get over stiff, and for a lot of us it's a bit stiff and a bit flat. So can we just feel that the heart in its balloon tent bumping around on the inside back of the chest? The shoulder blades will have to get out of the way because the rib spine is moving. And this is its natural orientation. It's happy, the back of the ribs are happy to float up towards the sky. Jaw comes into the back of the head. And this starts to give us length to the inside of the neck spine. Psoas's body, anterior scaling, connects to the collarbone and goes into the inside of the neck spine, just like psoas connects to the inside of the thigh bone and then takes you into the spine. They are muscles that cross the body. And they just help us to give us that length and upward lift. Psoas fires the spine up into the ribs, and the anterior scaling pulls the collarbone up and into the back of the neck spine. So we really feel that the crown of the head is being drawn away, firstly towards the front of the wall in front of you. And like you've got a paintbrush at the top of your head, you can just paint that nice stripe down the wall in front of you and then along the floor towards you. And then as we draw the nose into the back of the head, we draw into the back of the head, can we really touch in with the top of the spine, base of the skull, top of the spine, right in there, sort of underneath the ears. If you want a landmark to go for, it's sort of between the ears. Gives us this lovely nod head. And can we feel that the skull can slide and glide at the top of the skull? It's not a big movement at the top of the skull. Top of the spine, it's not a big movement. But we do want the rockers of the skull to slide backwards and forwards on this lovely sort of ring of bone sat at the top of the spine. We want that. Sometimes it can get a bit stiff and a bit sticky if it's stuck together. The rest of the spine not so involved in this movement until we take the jaw back and then start to walk down the inside of the neck spine. There's 7 vertebrae in here. A lot smaller than the other vertebrae in the spine, but they are there, and we do need space for them. So notice where we get into a bit stiff and a bit sticky. And as the head comes down, we then start to walk into the thoracics. And again, we've got that lovely process of the ribs starting to lift. Up. And then as we come through the low ribby spine into the low spine, we've just been practicing this, so it should be easy now. We can wander down the inside of the lumbers into the toe, she says, just like that. It is a practice, not a perfect, because we're not taught interoception at school. We're taught everything external. We're not taught how to navigate our internal landscape and our internal awareness. So these practices are important. We need to become aware of what's happening inside us, not least so that we can just keep an eye on everything. It gives us a great early warning system for anything that might be going slightly awry. So going in the opposite direction again, it's a lengthening. The tail is going away towards the top of the wall behind you, which draws the lumbers with it. From the ribs, we're not letting the ribs crash down towards the floor. They're supported by that internal ligament. Remember, we talk about that with Dave in his lovely front facing sling. There's a lovely hammock that lays on the inside of the spine. We can drop the vertebrae into it almost like a trampoline. This is all made up stuff in your head, by the way. There is a ligament there, but it's not that loose. It's all part of the vertebrae. But it's this idea that, particularly through the stiff thoracic, we've still got this feeling of lengthening, like the tortoise coming out of her shell. There's a lengthening of the thoracic through into the neck, and then the head is going forwards and then up towards the top of the wall. And then we can just come on back into neutral, and the sit bones will draw you back. We're running the pelvis back on the, we're sending the pelvis back on the runners at the top of the legs, so we don't lose the lift to the pelvis as we go back. And then we can just let the palms of the hands be pulled forwards a little bit. So we've still got that length and lift from the ribs going forwards. And we can just take the hands off the ground for a second, just give the hands a shake out if that's needed. And then we're just finding the elbows, pointy parts of the elbows get pulled down into the ground. The hands can come together. And just walking the elbows forwards just a little bit. Just to take us into that underside back of the arm and down the side of the ribs there. You can get a little bit, again, a bit stiff and a bit sticky here. And then you can go your hands back down onto the ground. So we're going to take the right hand, just turn it on its side. Long little finger side, and we're just going to take that up towards the top corner, opposite top corner. So it's the right hand going up to the left corner of your mat. You'll feel the rotation. Remember that the arm goes in through the socket and connects at the thoracic, connects at the spine, base of the ribs. So we've got this lovely arm that's causing the steep rotation. The shoulder blade stays on the back of the body. And then we can come back and plant the hand under the shoulder, and then left side, going up to the top right corner of the mat, gives us that lovely rotation. Back to center. And just each side, just practicing that. We've got the pelvis, feet, knees, sit bones lengthening away. So just noticing, can we keep the pull equal down through both legs into that rotation without throwing the body weight over to one side, which is what I was doing quite happily before I interrupted that. So it's fine for us to want to, because if something doesn't move, something else has to, and the muscles in the back of the ribs can be quite restricted at times. Like I say, they are supposed to be stiff because they're a protective mechanism, but we want to see if we draw that chalky line down the center of our bodies. We want to stay within that chalky line as much as possible So we're just rotating around it. It's almost like if we were in a workshop, we put a broomstick or broom handle down the back of your shirt into the top of the waistband of your trousers, and that helps you to feel like we're rotating around the broom handle. So the same with the spine. We've got this, column of the spine. Not that we call it that here, but we imagine this column of the spine, and we just want to rotate around the column of the spine and noticing where there's any deviations away from that. Maybe the head starts to come forwards, or maybe the ribs move differently, or most commonly the hips swing out. We start to lose one of the feet on the floor, and we're kind of buckling ourselves into the movement. One side will be different to the other, of course they are. Can we keep the pull equal down through both feet, equal down through both shins? My answer to that on the right side this morning is no. So it's perfectly okay to just work with what you have into the range that you have, even if your brain thinks that that might be a bit limited and not your full potential because you've been further before. And try to leave those expectations outside. So the next time we come back, just going to come onto our tummies. We'll find your way back into your child pose. Just let the arms have a bit of a rest. And then we're going to come down onto our tummy. And we're finding the root of the nose. That space where the nose finds the forehead. Elbows are around the eye line. Just up towards the top here. And as the elbows pull down into the ground, we get that long arm bones through the sockets into the ribs. Same at the feet. It's exactly the same as we were doing when we were laying on our back. Feet get pulled down into the ground. Feel as the big toe and the inside of the heel connect to the ground. And they might not, by the way, it might just be an imagining, depending on the flexibility of the heel and the hip. But as that foot gets pulled down into the ground, back of the knee gets pulled open, front of the hip gets pulled open, waist goes long, front of the ribs come into the back of the ribs. Then we can play with that on the other side. Foot gets pulled down into the ground, back of the knee gets pulled open, front of the hip, side of the waist, long spine. And it's, the root of the nose, or the bridge, the bridge into the forehead, that connection there. Initially, it might feel like the nose is too big and is getting in the way. But the more space we get through the thoracic spine into the neck spine, the further away the back of the head is allowed to go towards the top of your mat. And the more space we get into these structures that sort of behind the ear, down into the top of the shoulder, as we get more space and more space, then the head is realigning itself at the top of the spine. And it just gives us more and more space into the neck spine and into the thoracic, which, you know, we can get a little bit stiff and a bit sticky at the top of the shoulder side of the neck here. So if we tuck the toes under on the right side, introduce the toes into the ground, let the heel be pulled away towards the wall behind you. And then we're just feeling that the foot can be pulled away towards the wall behind you. The whole leg comes out of the waist towards the wall behind you, and that's all we're interested in, is just that leg being pulled away. The further the leg gets pulled away, it might start to come up towards the sky, but it's not because we're lifting the leg, it's because we're feeling that the leg can drop back into its socket, back into the spine, and then it has that sort of reciprocal growth that allows it to go out and away, but it's coming from the lumbars, it's coming from the solar plexus rather than just a glute activation. There is a lot of glute work happening, and there's a lot of leg muscles that are involved as well, but it's a line-wide event that comes from the solar plexus rather than just a glute contraction and trying to lift a heavy leg up towards the sky. Notice what's happening in the arms and the shoulders and the back of the ribs while we're messing around with this stuff. Because legs are heavy and sometimes the core doesn't want to do all the work, so it sends it up to somewhere else, sends it up, the shoulders start to come up around the ears, or the jaw gets clenched, or we start to feel restriction around the neck, something like that. And as always, one side might be a little bit easier than the other. And we'll just work with what we've got. So for those of us that swim, this is a real game changer, because when we connect the legs into the low spine like this, when we're in the water, this allows the pelvis and the ribs to rotate independently of each other. And movement comes from the core structures and the leg muscles, not just the leg muscles by themselves. So if it feels nice to do opposite arm and opposite leg, then you can. We leave the elbows connected into the ground, long elbows coming back through in that lovely V shape that we can feel now that we're on our fronts. We've got this V shape that takes us down into the between the shoulder blades, but we've also got a lovely V shape that takes us down into the base of the ribs as well. So as the left foot gets pulled away towards the wall behind you, the right arm can connect through its socket. And again, the arm is going forwards and then lifts off the ground. So we're not dropping into the lumbars, and be mindful for that. There's those of us that are very flexible, it's very easy for us to drop in there. So it's almost It's almost like a game, one of those trapdoor games. We don't want to fall down the trapdoor of the low spine. So notice it'll be arm into ribs, arm into ribs, arm into ribs, legs into ribs, legs into ribs, legs into ribs. So we're extending away in both directions. The spine gets extended. The head picks up from between the shoulder blades into that spine. So it's long. And then, we just get consciously involved in the lengthening. The fact that we come up as incidental, the body does that by itself. It's a side effect, if you like. As soon as we get into our heads the idea that we have to lift something, the body gets super, super heavy, and then we fall back into our old habits again. So stay with that extendable feeling, that gift of extending that's given from the spine, or expansion that's given from the spine. And as soon as we lose it, we come back to center and we go and play with something else. The other side in this case. We just do one more on each side. And then you just come back to the center. So just bringing the hands underneath the shoulders. Let the elbows go back down towards the heels. Elbows back down towards the heels, draws the head and the neck in towards the heart center, because the shoulder blades are going down the back of the body as well. And it's taking all the body weight back and down into the legs. The ribs go in towards the spine. And then the legs pull down and take the pelvis back. So we've got this supported spine. There's no soggy bits in the middle. Take ourselves all the way back into child pose. And then we can float forwards and come into our sitting position. So just finding your way around into sitting. Going to have the legs out in front. And the knees are bent. So you want to find the sit bones. I'm not sure which way those are going, which is best. But we find the sit bones. We need a pot to grow our spine from. And if we've got a pelvis that's tilting under, we've got a spine that's struggling to grow out of its pot. So we'll turn the spine into a big ball. So just exploring the ball. Can we go out to the edges of the ball, of the pelvis, forwards towards the front of the sit bones? Pubic bone feels like it gets pulled down into the ground. And we're looking for those points of resistance. So noticing where the leg connects into the pelvis. And it's an interesting one because something I was playing with yesterday. Notice when you're on the back of the sit bone and how the side of the waist can collapse. And then if we go forwards, if we encourage that pelvic bone, if we encourage that hip bone to roll forward, so we start to come over the bump of the sit bone and onto the front, then we feel that we get this nice lift out of the waist and this nice lift to the rib. Maybe a conscious effort to get there. So we just keep noticing rest my elbows on the inside of the knees, I think. And again, it's just noticing where the legs can leave the pelvis alone. Can the pelvis be free to arrange itself the way that it wants, independent of the legs? And we might find that the answer to that on one side or both sides is no, depending on where the leg has become too close coupled to the pelvis. So how are we feeling in the top of the adductors? So this lovely big set of muscles that lays on the inside of the femur or the inside of the thigh bone. It's got really dense connections into the pelvis. So we use the roundness of the snooker ball heel and the spaciousness in the back of the knee, which is why we keep the knee bent, because we want that space in the back of the knee, which then allows the thigh bone to fall back into the pelvis. And then we've got that lovely roundness of, you know, we're sort of going round and round the sit bone, if you like, where it feels that way. So we're just exploring as you go round and round the snooker ball heel, you'll feel the different muscles at the top of the leg. As we move around the sit bone, we'll feel the connections of the pelvis to the top of the leg and those muscles again. And there's just a point where everything feels like it can relax, but there's a deep upward lift that happens in the side of the waist because of it. It's like we hit the jackpot, and it feels very effortless. But there's a tensional quality to it as well. So it's not inertia. So if it's easier to do one side than the other, if you do have two sides that are markedly different, I do. Markedly different. That can be a lot of feedback. It can be a bit overwhelming to have that much feedback coming through from both sides that are so different. So it may be that doing one side and then playing with the other is useful. If you know that you're fairly balanced through the pelvis and there's no interventions there or anything wonky, I'm going to say that's a fairly rare occurrence. Just throwing that out there. So if you are the unicorn with a balanced pelvis, because most of us don't. But again, it's just that exploration. Can we take our awareness down into the pelvis? It's not somewhere that we tend to spend a lot of time, particularly if we've been chucked out of there by, you know, surgery. I don't like the word trauma, but, you know, surgery experiences or birthing experiences or any other kind of experiences that go on, you know, down in this lower trunk area. If we've been kind of pushed out of that area for whatever reason, can we take time gently to drop back in there? We can explore around that sit bone. We can notice tissues that we've been here long enough, they might be starting to change now. Same with the heel. As we circumnavigate the heel, we might start to find the tissues are starting to change now. And we're starting to get more space, more connection, and more upward lift. These things take time. We could spend 3 hours of a Monday morning just messing around with how to allow the body just to sort itself out. Like I say, the connections of the legs into the pelvis are in places really dense and really tough, and they need to be, because our legs need to be attached to our pelvis and our spine. If they weren't firmly attached, we'd be in trouble. So we need that. But over time, these structures can become a little bit fibrous. They can become a little bit stiff and a little bit sticky. So it's good for us to take time here. The parts that are fibrous and sticky, of course, then give rise to other parts that become too loose and take us down a road perhaps of instability, because we've got, if something is overly restricted, then something else will de-restrict, because we have to achieve the movement somehow. So now we've got both heels pulling down into the ground, sending the legs back into the pelvis. Maybe we can feel a bit more of a unity through the ball of the pelvis. We've got the legs coming in, we've got the ball of the pelvis in the middle, and then we've got this lovely spine that can just grow out of that pot that we have created. And from there, we can just explore lift through the solar plexus. So as the ribs come in, as the arms come in, we're exactly back to where we started, right from the beginning of the session. Have we got legs that can come through the pelvis and come into the spine? Have we got arms that can come through the shoulders and connect to the spine? Have we got a head that can find the top of the spine? And we know when we've got it, because when the head feels that it is this one, when the head feels that it starts to connect with the top of the spine, we get this. We've got the nod head right at the top, where the skull articulates on that ring of bone underneath. But other than that, we've got a head that then connects with the neck spine all the way down to between the shoulders. And it lifts out of the chest, and then it pulls up through the diaphragm, and it allows the legs just to hang down from the other side of the diaphragm. So the front of the ribs coming back towards the spine gives us this nice roundness on the thoracic, and then the curve of the neck shows itself because the head that is lifting away, we're pulled up by our tensional network. The gravity pulls us down, the tensional network pulls us up. It's very, very spacious if we allow it to be. So we just take the hands behind the knees and just bring the legs back in. Take the soles of the feet together and let the knees drop out to the sides. We can find that nice round ball with the pelvis. And we can just play with the feet. You can massage your feet, press into the big toes. You can open your feet like a book if that's good, gets you right into the adductors there. And you're just going to bring your hands underneath the knees, just bringing the feet into wherever's good, either cross legs or the legs out in front. Have something behind you to just support you a little bit if you need that. And then just one hand on the tummy, one hand on the chest. We're going to take 3 nice deep breaths in. So with your breath in, tummy lifts first, then the chest lifts. And then when you breathe out, chest goes back first, then the tummy in last. So we're breathing into the tummy, up into the chest, up, up, up into the crown of the head. And then the breath out, chest sinks back, then the tummy. Breath in lifts the tummy, then the chest, then the chest back, then the tummy. Final breath. Good. And we'll just give the hands and the feet a nice shake, making a nice rotation with the wrists and the ankles, taking the arms up over the head. Nice and long, swinging body. And then just giving the shoulders a nice roll. And take a moment to check in with yourself, notice how you feel. Good. You've worked hard today, lovelies. Go gently with yourselves and play through as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kaz.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.